Paul Watson has a counterpiece to Psychology Today's hit piece on me. But I want Paul to also add the history of psychiatry and psychology with Hitler, the Soviets, and, of course, the Communist Chinese. And I want to put in there what Keiser mentioned about how it was psychologists and psychiatrists that ran the torture, including in the Army's report, raping the children. So let's make sure that we show that this system works for the globalist. I mean, it's nothing but a group of high priests that... What do you think of this move to list, and that's what they do, Psychology Today hit piece labels conspiracy thinking as psychotic illness, talks about how we're potentially violent and dangerous, says right here that it's dopamine levels, that we're borderline schizophrenic. You know, we're so insane we're hearing choo-choo trains in the background. I can tell Madsen's by a train. I mean, this is really a juvenile trick. He says there's no world population reduction numbers. None of that's real. There's no Bank of the World. There's no global banking cartel. It's just, Madsen, we are completely mad.
Well, I ran a story not long ago about the National Security Agency, and I've been writing about how people that work there have been subjected to psychological and psychiatric abuse by the medical department there as a way to basically pull their clearances if they're considered not to be working within the system. And recently I found out that the NSA Security, which is called the Q Group, and NSA Medical are working together now prescribing what they call happy pills. This is Prozac and Zoloft for employees who show that they're not towing the line. So here we have another example of what can only be described as how the Soviet Union handled dissidents. They had these psychushka psychiatric hospitals. If you were against the Soviet system, they thought you were crazy, and they would put you in a psychiatric hospital. Now we see that happening here within some of our own intelligence agencies.
Well, it was, I mean, watching documentary films and reading history books about Nazi Germany, most of the tyranny from 33 to 38, before they really started the big official camps, was psychiatry, and it was merged with eugenics, and they were the ones that would come and take your kids and raise them in government dorms. They were the ones that would come take your kid who had a problem and then euthanize them. And I would bring this up. I mean, I brought up the famous inventor of lobotomies, how he would do public lobotomies with an ice pick, and he just said that's not true. And in fact, search engine, startpage.com or Google or whatever for people right now on screen, lobotomy with an ice pick. And you'll have mainstream news. And I even gave this to him, and he would just giggle and say I was crazy on the other end of the phone. I mean, who are these people, Wayne Madsen? Are they like on power trips and they love going in and having women come into them and lay down, you have mental illness, I'll help you? I mean, it sounds just like a Svengali con artist guild.
Well, when we look at this CIA report on how they treated the detainees with prolonged diapering, extended nudity, you have to wonder what kind of perverts, and I think that's where this investigation is going. I've written about Dick Cheney. I've written about Scooter Libby. When you look at what these two individuals, I won't call them gentlemen because they're not gentlemen by any stretch, but when you look at what these two individuals were involved in, Libby writing a novel about turn-of-the-century Japan in the early 20th century where there's references to bestiality and pedophilia, and we know about, Dick Cheney had a predilection for some of the escorts provided to Halliburton by Pamela Martin and Associates, which was run by the late Deborah Jean Palfrey. I think we're getting to the actual crux of what the last administration was all about.
Well, absolutely. Here's NPR. We just search engine lobotomy with ice pick, and you can click on it and watch photos and videos of them ramming the ice pick into the corner of the eye, into the skull with pleasure. And I sent him this NPR article, NPR, and he just laughed, man. It's funny. I mean, it's funny that they're this psychotic guild out enjoying itself, having its way with everyone. And the New Freedom Initiative wants to drug half of the school children in America. I mean, that came out in mainstream news, and I would bring that up, and he would just laugh. I mean, it's not funny. And I don't think they realize their mind games aren't working with us anymore, Wayne.
No, definitely not. And I think, that's why I think what we're seeing now, the stuff come out of the White House talking about shutting down the Internet if there's a national emergency. Obviously, there's no interest in having information available when you've got people like this with their agendas running the show.
Well, Wayne, let's get into some other issues here. I digress. It's just what do you call it where the mainstream media will say we're setting up a world government to be run by private banks, and it's going to be a planetary regime, and we're going to drug your water, and then we read it, and then they write articles saying we're insane, it doesn't exist, in sometimes the same publications a month later. What, I mean, is that double speak, double think? I mean, what is that?
Well, I think it's just a Hegelian approach to creating conflict, creating chaos, constant chaos. When you have constant chaos, of course, people can take advantage of that situation, and we've seen it happen time and time again. I'm actually sitting across from the CBS News Bureau here in Washington right now. That's why you're hearing the traffic noise. But, I mean, if you talk to these journalists individually, those who are left, who haven't been laid off with this downturn in the economy and this extreme change in how news is covered in the United States, you talk to them individually, they know these things, but they'll never get it through the producers and the editors to get it on the air on the major news networks.
Yeah, all that's left now is a really seedy guild of mercenary media people who will just do whatever they're told. And
well, that's right.
And I think that's only going to accelerate the discrediting of them quicker, because these are such lazy hit pieces they do on the freedom movement. I mean, don't they understand this is only confirming to everyone just how scum-filled they are?
Well, I think it gets to this whole idea of the elitism. You've got all the major networks now controlled by big corporations, and it's this ivory tower approach. I cover the news inside the Beltway, but the term inside the Beltway has always been used to describe this sort of incestuous relationship that politicians, journalists, and others, what they call quote unquote movers and shakers, have in this town. And obviously, if you're reading from something that isn't part of the official script, you're always criticized and made fun of and intimidated.
Well, I'm also seeing this drumbeat against myself and other activists that we're violent and we're calling for violence, even though I'm calling for the opposite. That's in Psychology Today. Within hours of Poplawski doing what he did, the Southern Poverty Law Center said it was my fault. I've got some of the Soros people now coming out and saying Obama is not calling for national service and I'm a dangerous liar. Why am I... Because I know this happens to you too, but I mean, really, it's happening bad now. And I'm wondering if in your expertise, you think they're building up to something. Because in my experience, they demonize you just to demonize you and discredit you, or they demonize you in preparation for something else. And I hope that's not what it is. False charges, my murder, whatever the case may be. And whatever the case is, I'm ready for it. And this is the path I'm on. And it's an honor to fight these people. But why do you think they're really coming after me right now?
Well, as I say, we've always had an element of this in the past where journalists who didn't fall into line were criticized, and certainly Jack Anderson faced a lot of that criticism. I.F. Stone, Izzy Stone, faced that criticism, and others. But now we're seeing with this conglomeration of the media, the corporate media having a lot more power to demonize those who basically call them out on how they cover these stories. And certainly we see that time and time again. And as you say, months later, for example, NBC Dateline is reporting that the vaccines, all vaccines, may not be safe. They featured this man, Dr. Wakefield, who has been criticized by his peers, who said, look, these vaccines have to be looked at. I haven't done all the research, but the research should be conducted, and we should have, an independent verification by professionals as to whether these vaccines are in fact safe.
Well, that's the thing, is they're now admitting Gardasil's killing a bunch of people, and that in flu vaccine trials in Europe, it's killed a bunch of people. I got that wrong and flipped it to Texas. They were worried in Texas, but the deaths are in Europe. We showed those articles. I mean, I'm just wondering where all this is going, because there seems to be a crisis in confidence, and instead of the establishment being more truthful, they're now more and more just intensifying the lying, or they're talking out of both sides of their mouths, almost like they're committing suicide politically in front of us.